Hey friend, thank you so much for tuning in to Fun Ahead TV today. Today, we're working on this, my 1998 Porsche base model Boxster, AKA budget base model Boxster. We're doing some cosmetic stuff, something we have not done on the channel in a very long time. I'm super excited to get into it, so let's get into it.
Rippin', tearin', the rippin' and the tearin'.
All right, so like I said, this right here is my 1998 Porsche Boxster. A car that I bought from the father of a very good friend of mine. I actually flew out to Seattle several months ago to pick this car up from him, and I proceeded to drive it cross country home to Columbus, Ohio, where I live. It was a super fun, super awesome little road trip. If you missed the video, please go back and watch it. Since getting this car home, we have done quite a bit to it. We did an engine out service wherein basically we did a minor mechanical refresh, refreshing all of the plastic and rubber bits inside of the engine, something that is very common on these 25-year-old plus engines. And since doing that engine out, I've been driving this car so much. I have been falling in love with this car like crazy, but more on that in a future video. In the meantime, we're gonna do some cosmetic stuff to this thing. Now, we're not going crazy in depth. Why? Because, well, she's a driver and she's perfect that way. She definitely has quite a few blemishes, scratches, wheel scuffs, what have you, and that to me is perfectly fine. I don't want a car in perfect shape if I'm gonna drive it a lot, because that means every single time I park it somewhere or do anything with it, I'm gonna be worried about it and stressed about it. With this car, I don't have to. And I'm not saying it's in bad cosmetic shape. In fact, it's in quite good cosmetic shape for a 25-plus-year-old vehicle. But there are several larger scratches, particularly towards the rear of the vehicle for whatever reason, that I would like to take care of to try and just knock those down a little bit and make them a little more subtle. So let's go ahead and talk about it and see if we can't do some satisfying work of kind of just easing those out of the paint just a little bit. Let's do it. Here is the spot in question. Now, I'm gonna try to get as much B-roll as possible so you guys can get as good of an idea as possible about what we're working with here, but it's pretty scratched up right here in this particular spot. It does kind of look like something backed into the car or the car backed into something. These are kind of, they're the scratches. You can feel them with your hand, and there's definitely spots where the paint is just straight up removed. In addition, it does kind of look like in this particular area, the bumper has been resprayed or tried to be touched up, because I can kind of see a little bit of overspray. So that will kind of make this job that much more difficult. So kind of in total, I'm absolutely not expecting to be able to remove this entirely, because especially where it's scratched, you know, and the paint's removed, it just pretty much is what it is without just entirely getting the bumper repainted. However, with a little bit of effort with a random orbital polisher, I think that we can take some of these scratches out to just make this look a little bit less obvious. So we're gonna start by first removing this little bumperette so we can get better access to just this whole area in general. And then we're gonna clean this thing up and see what we can try to do with the polisher. Let's go ahead and get into it. So I got our bumperette off, as you can see. I'm just gonna go ahead and come in here with a little bit of this mean green cleaner slash degreaser. That way we can just kind of get into these cracks and just get, you know, any amount of dirt that's just kind of residual out of them, so that as we're working it with the polisher, we're not going to be spreading that dirt around. Obviously, we really want to make sure to get all of this, the entire working area, contaminant free, because if we start dragging around any contaminants, then it's just going to make the situation even worse. That being said, cleaning this whole area did kind of make the spots where the paint is physically removed, it made these a little bit more obvious. That definitely is getting me a little bit more concerned, just seeing how many spots there are where the paint is physically gone, just because the polisher can tend to be a little bit violent. So I really, really don't want to get to hitting these spots too hard and then remove even more paint. So I think initial game plan is going to be focus on this area over here where the paint's not physically gone, try to smooth out these scuffs, and then we might just have to end up living with this area right over here. But you know, if we can kind of polish this down and make this area overall less obvious, then take it from being like this big of a scuff to this big of a scuff, then I think I'll be okay with that, but we'll have to just see what ends up happening. Okay, so now that I've hit it with a little bit of the cleaner degreaser, I'm gonna hit it with just a little bit of some water and isopropyl alcohol mix, just to remove any amount of oils from the surface. Next up, it's clay bar time. If you've never used a clay bar before, it is an absolute miracle product. These things just take off an insane amount of contaminants off of your paint that you didn't even know were there. Basically anything from like tiny little bits of tree sap to like any just kind of dirt. These things are just absolutely wild, and then they leave your paint feeling completely smooth. But this is a very essential process for any time you are utilizing a random orbital, just because of the fact that, again, the random orbital can just do so much damage, unintended damage, I'll say. So you have to make sure that your paint is 100% contaminant free. This is the way you do that. That being said, these of course do leave your paint without any amount of wax or protection. So if you do ever clay bar your car, you do have to follow up behind the clay bar and just put a coat of wax on it. It is, yeah, the paint is definitely now much, much smoother and completely contaminant free after doing that tiny little bit of clay barring. Of course, I can still feel the little bit of overspray in this area, but I'm not feeling any amount of, stuff on the paint anymore. Whereas, oh yeah, if I hit up here, just listen to the difference. Listen to the difference. I'm gonna use my microphone. Okay, now using different fingers so I don't put contaminant straight on the paint. Now listen. You can't even hear it. It's wild. All right, so here is my Griot's Garage 6-inch pad random orbital. This is an older iteration of their random orbital. They have a much newer version of this these days, but it still does the job. So the gist of this is it spins and it kind of does this kind of motion as well on the center axis. So it basically does that waxing motion and turns the pad as well. The intent behind that is, well, if you just use like a fixed axis orbital, then it can very easily burn into the paint because you're concentrating so much heat on it. This way, it doesn't focus that heat in any one spot, so it's much more forgiving. So this is what's called a correcting pad. It's a little bit more abrasive. Plus I have, you can see this paste on here. This is what's called a correcting cream. It's just basically a cream with like a very mild abrasive in it, basically like a broken down like chalk. Between these two, the pad and the cream, it will get on this paint and then the orbital will run on it and it will physically take off a little bit of the paint. That is what will do the actual smoothing of these scratches. Now again, I'm going to not focus much energy on the areas where the paint is removed physically. So I'm gonna kind of keep it in this general area for the most part to try and smooth this out as much as possible. I might just touch off real quick over in this area just to see what happens, but the last thing I want to do is remove more paint, which this could very easily do. All right, so first round done-ish. Let's see what we're working with here. Wow, I can just tell from that tiny little bit that we just did that we made a dramatic improvement there. That's pretty nice. Again, obviously we still have these cuts into it, but the surrounding area around these cuts is dramatically improved. I'm trying to like get them in the light so I can see as much as possible. And again, I'm not expecting perfection here. I just want a reduction of obviousness. So I'm gonna put a little bit more cream on my pad here, maybe do another round of this or two, and then just see how much more smoothing we can do of this area. Obviously, we don't want to go too nuts on it because then we can just start physically just removing the paint from the area altogether. But if I pay very close attention to make sure that I am not actually removing the paint down to the plastic bumper, I think we can, we've got a little bit more ways to go before we kind of get into that danger zone. So yeah, I think you can probably see that there's been a dramatic improvement from where we started and where we are currently. And obviously we haven't done the finishing stage yet. We have yet to do the actual like smoothing stage. Think of this process as basically like using different levels of sandpaper. You do like the more coarse grit sandpaper at first, and then that leaves a pretty dull finish, and then you go over it again with a more fine compound and pad, and then that smooths it over even further. That being said, this pad is what actually does the removal of the scratches. So in my opinion, I don't really think we're gonna be able to get a whole lot more done with regards to removing these scratches. I kind of just wanted to blend them. So it is what it is at this point, unless we, again, like I said, repainted the bumper entirely. All right, here is our finishing pad and respective finishing compound. Now this, again, has, I think, a slightly very mild abrasive in it as well. in the compound. And this pad is, again, even less abrasive than the orange one that we just used. The intention of it is to kind of just smooth out any kind of duller finish that we've got on the paint as a result of what we just did. All right, let's take our microfiber, get that stuff off the paint and see what we're looking like here. Pretty good. Pretty good, I would say. Okay, now, because I'm me, I've decided that I'm not gonna leave well enough alone, and we're just gonna do one last little layer, and that is physically actually waxing this vehicle. The finishing sealant does provide some level of wax, but I wanna go just one more layer with this pad that doesn't have any abrasiveness to it whatsoever, and this stuff right here, the Griot's Garage Liquid Gloss Poly Wax. I don't even believe they sell this stuff anymore, but this stuff is literally liquid gold. It does such an incredible job, and I think because they're pushing their ceramic coat wax line so much, they basically did away with this, but this stuff is insane. I'm kind of like an old school wax guy. I prefer that over the ceramic coat stuff, even though, you know, many people could argue that ceramic coating is much, much better. It's also kind of just like the buzzword of the day, I think. This stuff goes on thick, and man, does it stay around for a long, long time, and it protects so, so well. Let's go in, just wipe off our wax. Ooh, the paint is like butter. It's like butter. Ooh, she's so soft. That wax is absolutely outrageous. Well, all right, and there you have it, friend. We went from having what was once a pretty obvious, pretty serious little scuff patch to now having a scuff patch that's still there, but much, much less obvious, way, way more subtle. Basically the same thing. Why did I just reiterate that in that way? Anyway, I just wanted to make a quick video just showing you guys the process of how that's done. You can definitely take out dullness in your paint with normal paint correction, which is the process that we just did. Multi-stage paint correction. And boy, is it a satisfying process. Obviously, we're kind of spot checking currently, honing in on specific areas of the car, but very soon here, probably still over the winter, I am going to do a full detail of this vehicle, get this thing completely paint corrected and waxed, and good to go for daily driver duty. If you enjoyed this video, please do me a huge favor and hit that like button. And please subscribe if you enjoy automotive content such as this and want to see more of it coming to you every single week via Fun Ahead TV. I think this process is so satisfying to just watch unfold before your eyes. It's crazy to just see just the immediate, well, not immediate, it's very time intensive, but the step-to-step changes that paint correction can provide. It's pretty satisfying. So anyway, thank you all again so much for being here. I really appreciate each and every one of you for watching. Yes, you, I'm looking right at you, and I will see you all in the next video. See ya.
Rippin', tearin', the ribbon